Live from the city that never sleeps. 17 miles from Madison Square Garden, New York City. It's America at Night with Rich Valdez. America's favorite late-night talk program, featuring interesting guests from around the world and calls from across America. And now, here is your host, Rich Valdez.
Hi there, good evening, and what's up, America? I am Rich Valdez, Valdez with an S, at Rich Valdez on all of the social media. Welcome to the program tonight. 833-482-5337 is the phone number if you want to join us, 833-4-VALDEZ. And there's a bunch of things out there. Not a heck of a busy news day today. The Trump lawfare legal woes continue, right? That's really most of the stories that I'm seeing. Of course, there's some big threats, some big warning signs. The CIA's warning that Iran might attack within 48 hours. When was the last time the CIA made a warning that, that actually panned out? Yeah, I'll wait. I don't remember that ever happening. Other than the biggest thing I think they talked about recently was that the COVID pandemic was not a lab leak and that it was from a wet market in Wuhan, right? And I think we eventually found out from whistleblowers that that actually was not the case, that they found that it was a lab leak, but they changed their opinion because they were given a bonus by the CIA and, changed their official story. So anyway, they're warning of an intifada. That is not something that you eat. That's something where you kill people. And they're practicing these Palestinian intifada drills. And they're saying that the embassies are being evacuated. So I'll keep you up to speed on that as we see any development there. But I just, I don't see it, right? I don't see it happening right now. I mean, I'm sure there's going to be some increased attacks. There's been plenty of attacks. Not to mention what you see coming out of the Houthi rebels in Yemen and everything else that Iran gets its hands on. So it won't surprise me, I should say, when they continue their onslaught in the Middle East. The place is ablaze right now. It's a hotbed of you name it, right? It's a hotbed of Iranian activity. You've got the IDF fighting back. So as that materializes, if it does, I will keep you up to speed on that. Now, yesterday, I teased a story, and we talked a little bit about it with Jen Kabani from the College Fix. But the headline, honestly, I'm not over it. I'm not over the headline yet. The federal government is funding research to see if microaggressions are making, quote, Latinx people fat, nicotine-addicted alcoholics. And, we talked about this and how they were doing it with lesbians as well. And it seems that they pick people groups and they start doing their research to find out what's going on. But it blows me away that this is actually a thing where our federal government spends nearly $1 million on research investigating whether or not racial microaggressions, which again, their definition, not mine, are negatively impacting the health of Hispanic people. And this research came out of the University of Houston, where they're saying that this has been researched by the NIH. Why? To determine if ethnic microaggressions directed towards what they call Latinx populations are leading to elevated levels of alcoholism, smoking, and obesity. Now, that's what is, being reported by the Grant Records. One of the Health and Human Services funded studies defines microaggressions as brief, subtle forms of everyday discrimination due to racial ethnic status. And I remember the first time I heard this term, honestly, it was about 10 years ago, probably around April of 2014. And at the time, I was working for Project Veritas. James O'Keefe, big shout out to O Kizzle, Mon Nizzle. And I started off as a project manager and quickly moved up to being what they called the National Field Director, which put me in charge of, the secondary title was Director of Special Operations. It was very important, right? But ultimately what I did was I produced, videos, and we made videos, and I found the right people, the investigative journalists, to go out there and get this undercover footage on these different stories, in different parts of the country. We had people in Texas. We had people all over the place. And ultimately, I remember it was one that somebody had pitched to us, somebody who worked on a college campus, said, there's a real big push around microaggressions. And I didn't know what that was. So I looked it up, and they informed us. And I thought, wow, some of the things they were saying, it was just, just regular everyday life. They weren't microaggressions in any way. They were just regular instances. And one doesn't necessarily come to mind. As one does, I will, I'll explain it. But it was just fascinating to me that these simple things, like just referring to one's race, was considered a microaggression. And another interesting microaggression that they talked about back then was some people were taking exception to the Constitution of the United States as being, when it was referenced in class as a, historical document, the founding documents of our country, that some people were offended. They were like, no, that's a microaggression. And you're just talking about this racist document that says black people are 3/5 of a person is offensive to me, and I don't want to hear it, and I want to be removed from this class. And this type of thing was entertained. Yeah, believe it or not. And so the idea that we'd come up with was to do something along the lines of people being offended by the American flag, where not so much the Constitution itself. And I don't think we ever got to pull off the American flag one, but there were people that went out there, including James O'Keefe himself. He went out there wearing like a big foam cutout of the Constitution, and interviewing people about do you feel offended by our rights and whatnot. And it was really eye-opening. And I gave you all of that background context really to just talk about this idea of, I guess, overemphasizing microaggressions. And to me, this is something that we likely overplay while we're underplaying other things separate, right? For example, the Sean P. Diddy, Puff Daddy, Combs stuff. I think that was a flash in the pan. It made some headlines, and then it went away. And there's some reports that he's not making as much money on radio with the songs, but ultimately, it just comes and goes. Jeffrey Epstein came and went. It was never a big deal. But microaggressions, they're here to stay, right? Those things we're going to talk about day in and day out, and it just seems odd to me that we're going to have those conversations, and we're going to have them so deeply. Well, anyway, one of my friends, somebody I used to do some broadcasting with back in the days in New York City, hosts a fantastic podcast, a true crime podcast, and also does a lot of work as a entertainment reporter, and has an update on this P. Diddy situation. And we're going to get an update from Lauren Conlin straight ahead. Don't go anywhere.
This is America at Night with Rich Valdez. He's brown, he's bald, and he's breaking it down. It's America at Night with Rich Valdez.
All right, America, welcome back, amigos. We continue our conversation tonight. And again, if you want to join the conversation, feel free to give a call, 833-482-5337, 833-4-VALDEZ. And right before the break, I teased a little bit about what we're going to talk about here with our good friend Lauren Conlin. And one of the things that I wanted to bring to all of your attention is some of P. Diddy's friends are not rolling over on him. Now, while the rapper 50 Cent has been out there, constantly poking at Diddy for a long time, making allegations that he's a fruitcake and this and that, and really just giving him a hard time. Fat Joe, who's one of my favorites, he was on Fox 5 New York last week, and here's what he had to say.
I know Diddy 30 years. I'm just praying. It's a very sad situation. I don't know enough about it. That's as far as I could go. I stood up last night, maybe 4 hours, praying for him and his kids. his kids. I know him all their life. So, I'm just praying for everybody.
He's praying for everybody. And you know what? You can't get mad at somebody for doing that. I think that's important. And I want to, add to the prayers of Fat Joe, and I appreciate those, honestly. But I want to get some analysis on this, right? I want to get the scoop, because I saw this crazy story yesterday that said that Diddy is not running free, hanging out in Miami or wherever he's hanging out, but that he actually was able to get away on one of his private jets. He's actually hiding out somewhere, and that the person that we're seeing here is a body double. And I thought, my gosh, this is some of the craziest stuff I've ever seen. And that's why I said, you know what, we've got to get with Lauren Conlin, because she is fantastic, right? Not general manager, reporter, producer at Magic Shack. She's the host of Lauren Interviews, the host of the Outlier podcast. And when it comes to true crime, when it comes to entertainment reporting, she always knows what's going on. And she also is probably the authority on the Grant Solomon case with her podcast, Corruption, What Happened to Grant Solomon. So, Lauren Conlin, tell us what's going on with P. Diddy. Welcome.
Wow, thank you for that introduction, and thank you for having me. So, Rich, I want to make this very clear to everybody. I don't know what Diddy is running from at this moment. He has not been arrested. There have been no actual charges against him as of right now. He has about 5 civil suits going on. That's not including Cassie, because Cassie's was settled a day after it went public in November of 2023. But we all know about the raids that happened last week. Now, these raids were in connection to a possible human trafficking allegation. Diddy has been accused of running an Epstein-like trafficking operation within the music industry. These are really serious allegations, and who better to help the feds than Cassie Ventura? She's been with Diddy for 10 years. That came out yesterday. And it's funny, you said you saw Fat Joe defending him. We've got Stevie J defending him, a Grammy-winning producer. And really, all I've seen is, I believe, Nick Cannon. He's really the only person that's speaking out on Diddy's behalf. It's really interesting that he doesn't have all of these people flocking to defend him. When you look at these pictures that were taken from his 50th birthday, you've got Kim Kardashian, you've got Jay-Z. And again, where is Jay-Z? No idea. So many people are silent right now. So I find that to be very telling as well. And if you go through some of these court documents, Rich, I mean, you're going to be very uncomfortable. They are not pleasant. One last thing I want to add is, to my knowledge, as of right now, Diddy has only filed one opposing motion to these 5 civil suits. Only one. It's the allegations with Harv Pierre, the CEO of Bad Boy Records, and another unnamed man, that they gang assaulted a minor back in the early 2000s. So it's a mess, and I believe it's just going to get messier.
Now, Lauren Conlin, looking at this, and again, I know you're well versed in when it comes to this stuff, right? True crime and entertainment reporting, and this is like the corner of both of those streets.
Yeah,
this is an interesting thing, right? Where I feel like, one could make the case that what's happening here is somebody's pissed off at Diddy, and now they're getting him, using the system to get him. Others can make the case that they've always known all along, and they've decided to come clean because they're somehow pissed off at him. I've heard this stuff forever, and rapper 50 Cent, he's been at it forever and a day, saying things about Diddy, and there's stuff all over the internet about, that alleges these things about him. And you're right that there's a lot of people that are kind of laying low, not saying, no, Puff is a great guy, we love him. So it kind of makes me think, is he on a sinking ship? What are your thoughts?
I unfortunately for him, I do believe he's on a sinking ship. It's going to be really difficult for him to come back from this. He actually, I don't want to say he quote unquote broke his silence after the raid, but his way of breaking his silence was posting a picture of his 1-year-old daughter on Instagram on Easter. And he lost about 45,000 followers on Instagram after that picture, which was pretty interesting because when the allegations came out, he actually gained some followers. So, like you said, 50 Cent has been very open about speaking truth about Diddy for, I would say, the last decade. So has Aubrey O'Day from Making the Band. Nobody has listened to her, which is really troubling. She's been talking about how she got kicked out of Danity Kane. And if people are not familiar, that's Diddy's MTV Making the Band. She says on a podcast she got kicked out because she would not comply sexually. His other ex, Gina Hunt, or I don't know how to pronounce it exactly, but she's an influencer, fitness influencer. She went on a podcast in 2019 speaking very, very candidly about Diddy essentially beating the crap out of her, but never punching her face, to not make it obvious. And listen, I sent those clips over to a body language, basically a human lie detector and a deception analyst, and they were like, yeah, it would appear that she's telling the truth. So I thought that was really interesting.
Now, what are your thoughts about the reports that Diddy has been out in Miami biking, appearing very carefree days after the big federal raid?
Yeah, I mean, those are all true because, listen, your demeanor and your arrogance and everything that you stand for, your entire life, that's not going to change overnight. It's very clear. He believes he's untouchable. He believes he can get away with everything. He is above the law. And I think we saw that in 1999, or I believe the trial was in 2001, with the shooting with J-Lo at the Brooklyn nightclub. And, this guy Shine got 10 years in prison, and Shine now, basically, I believe he leads the House of Representatives in Belize. Okay, so he's doing very well. And look at Diddy. Look what's happening to him. So it's pretty incredible that Diddy, his bodyguard, got no jail time, and Shine got 10 years. So, again, Michael Jackson's bodyguard also worked for Diddy, and he was said to be this big Hollywood fixer. It's all connected, Rich, and it's all coming out. So I'm just not surprised at any of this.
Folks, we're on with Lauren Conlin, keeping us up to speed on everything that's going on with this Puff Daddy, P. Diddy situation. And make sure you check out her work at nikkiswift.com, as well as her podcast, The Outlier, which is really good true crime stuff. And I want to jump into a little bit of that true crime stuff. We've probably got about 30 seconds before the music kicks in. But there's a case of missing moms in Kansas. Veronica Butler and Jillian Kelly in Oklahoma.
But
and it's causing a lot of people to become very suspicious. So I want to make sure that we have some time to jump into that as well, because there's also a missing teenager, Sebastian Rogers, and it seems to be that when I was younger, there were missing persons cases, and they were on the cartons of milk containers. And it was like, oh, these kids are missing. But the narrative has seemed to have changed since then. And now we know that kids don't just go missing, right?
Correct.
People steal them, right? They steal them to traffic them, to do bad things to them sexually and otherwise. And we're seeing how that gets intertwined with some of these entertainment stories like this Puff Daddy, Jeffrey Epstein, all these other cases. So I want to talk about that as well when we come back. Folks, again, we're on with Lauren Conlin. If you haven't seen her, you need to. She's terrific. She's the host of the Outlier podcast, and she's a culture writer for nikkiswift.com. Check her out at laurenconlin.com. That's CONLIN.com, laurenconlin.com. Keep it locked right here. I am Rich Valdez. It's America at Night. We're coming right back. Don't go anywhere.
America at Night with Rich Valdez.
On Saturday, March 30th, the Texas County Sheriff's Office requested the Oklahoma State Bureau of Investigation to investigate the suspicious disappearance of two women. This was 27-year-old Veronica Butler and 39-year-old Jillian Kelly. Their vehicle was found abandoned. This was near Highway 95 and Road L, and this was just south of Elkhart, Kansas. This was on the very northern part of rural Texas County, just south of that Kansas line.
So that's what's going on in the Midwest. And Lauren Conlin, bring us up to speed here, because I was just reading about this a little bit earlier, and it seems like it's developing very quickly. Tell us what you know.
Yeah, well, it's interesting. It's not developing quickly. These women disappeared over Easter weekend last Saturday, and their disappearance wasn't reported to the media until Monday. So, and by the way, it's to me as someone from the Northeast, it's incredibly confusing because they disappeared in a rural part of Texas County, Oklahoma, on the Kansas state line. These women are from Kansas. However, it's like when you read this, you're like, wait, I don't understand which state this is, but this is incredibly sad. And Jillian Kelly is one of the women. She's 39 years old, and she was accompanying Veronica Butler, who is 27 years old, to go have a visitation with Veronica's children, who were with Veronica's, it's so hard to reiterate, but they were with Veronica's ex's mother. She was never married. So it was stated last night that by the Oklahoma Bureau of Investigation, there are signs of foul play. However, we don't know what those signs are. Internet sleuths like myself, we have discovered court documentations that show that Veronica was in a nasty custody battle with her ex, and Jillian Kelly was the court-appointed supervisor that went with her. So my understanding, and I have spoken to a very close family member, they are not supposed to talk to the press in order to not hinder the investigation. But I have a solid working theory. I just don't feel comfortable speculating, I guess. I you know what I mean? It's tough. It's really tough.
Right, because these are real people with real lives.
Exactly. So it's hard for me to say, but what I have been tweeting about is the fact that Veronica Butler, in some of these court documents, she accused her ex, his name is Wrangler Rickman, of abuse. And these accusations were not substantiated by the court. And, you know, maybe his mom didn't like that. Maybe. And here's the thing. Her ex has been ruled out. There's documentation. He was actually arrested and had to report to rehab, which is inpatient, on March 22nd. And for 30 days, he's not allowed to have any contact with the outside world. So he has been ruled out to my knowledge. And I confirmed with a family member that he actually made it to rehab. And there would most likely be a warrant out if he didn't. But I just, you know, I go back and forth because I really believe that people genuinely want to help, and people on TikTok and on Twitter, they can help find valuable and valid information. But again, police aren't saying much.
Yeah, other than what they said in that statement that they released. And there was another clip of audio from that statement where they gave us a little bit more of a clue. Listen to this.
Our agents were able to determine that the abandoned vehicle that was found along that road had information that they were able to gather that showed signs that there was foul play.
So this is the allegation. They're saying they know there's foul play, but we don't know what this foul play is. And that's what I'm trying to figure out here is, you know, the investigators say that they think there's foul play. Why?
Yeah, I mean, so I what I like to do is I like to join a lot of the Facebook groups where people share information they find. And if you join the Facebook group, some people who are local have said a few things, you know, indicating what the foul. I can't confirm it. So it's so tough. It's so tough. But
what's some of the speculation that you're hearing on Facebook?
Well, some of the speculation is that there was a bloody hammer found. I found no evidence to support this. That could be absolute, you know, garbage, but it was out there. Something else is Veronica Butler, her brother, in the court docs. There's some allegations that he may have abused one of the children, and there was a no contact order in place, and that was violated. I mean, there's a lot of motive here, Rich. I have to say that a lot of motive within the family, and that's really important for law enforcement to know. Obviously, when they're looking into this.
Of course. I mean, that's, you know, I think part of the reason why they're kind of tight-lipped on this is because if they are building a case, they don't want to tip anybody off that, you know,
absolutely
they're zeroing in on the source here. So I rely on the internet sleuths like you to get the scoop on things. So
I
as we
stay up
learn
late
more,
reading these court docs. My husband's like, "Can you go to bed?" I'm like, "Nope, the writing's too small. It's taking me forever."
right? Well, this is interesting stuff, and I think like they say, inquiring minds want to know. Now, Lauren Conlin, in addition to these stories, what for everybody who's listening that loves hearing you on America at Night but hasn't yet subscribed to your podcast, what are you talking about on the podcast? What can they expect?
Yeah, so I do a mix of crime and pop culture. It's not super fun to talk about death and missing people all the time. So I do like to throw a celebrity or two in there. As you saw, the situation, Mike Sorrentino was on the show last Monday, and I will be following up with an episode tomorrow that has to do with the relevant case that we discussed, actually, the Karen Reed case out of Massachusetts. So it's a combination of relevant cases where hopefully I can help somebody. And then, a little bit of pop culture to lighten the mood.
Outstanding. And if people want to learn more about that and follow you and subscribe to the podcast, where do they go?
They can follow me on Twitter at Conlin_Lauren or on Instagram, Lauren Emily Conlin. I mean, you can find me everywhere. I have a TikTok, a YouTube, and then my podcast. I have two, as you mentioned, Corruption, What Happened to Grant Solomon. I am still investigating that case. And then the Outlier podcast hosted by Lauren Conlin, wherever you listen.
Outstanding. Folks, give her a follow, subscribe to her stuff. This is very interesting stuff, and few people are as committed as Lauren Conlin. Lauren, I want to thank you for being with us. This always is eye-opening.
Oh, thank you so much. Let's get a drink soon or dinner, whatever.
I'll drink to that. Sounds good, Lauren.
Okay, sounds good.
All right, take care. My best to the family. You bet. All right, and we continue with your phone calls and more. We'll be getting back into some of the political drama that's going on. There's a lot to discuss. We've got a full lineup tonight, so I want you to keep it locked right here. Don't go anywhere. I'm Rich Valdez.
This is America at Night with Rich Valdez. Call now, 833-4VALDEZ. That's 833-482-5337. 833-4VALDEZ. That's Valdez with an S.
Listen to you, Rich, all the time.
America at Night with Rich Valdez. Call now, 833-4VALDEZ. That's 833-482-5337. 833-4VALDEZ. That's Valdez with an S.
So, Mark Elias. Now, you guys know this guy was a lawyer for Hillary Clinton's campaign, and really is by many regarded the mastermind of all of the lawfare that went into kind of usurping the will of the people and circumventing the traditional rule of law around the 2020 elections. And he was on MSNBC yesterday saying this, and I think this is a very eye-opening thing. But he says the Republicans' plan for November is to make it harder to vote and easier to cheat. Now, I haven't seen any such proposal from Republicans on this. You tell me if it's easier to cheat if you have a voter ID, which I think they say is racist, and they say most Republicans support voter ID, then why would it be easier to cheat? Well, listen to Mark Elias.
We have to keep in mind two things. The first is that Republicans, their plan for November is to make it harder to vote and easier to cheat. The harder to vote is the voter suppression tactics, the voter intimidation, the efforts to prevent every eligible citizen from being able to cast their ballot and have it count. The easier to cheat is the stuff after the election, where they want to try to rig the rules through state legislatures and the like to try to undermine the will of the people. We have to be very clear-eyed that that's their strategy. The second thing, though, Nicole, and this is, I'm speaking now to the business community and everyone else. All
right, I want to jump in right here. He says that they want to make it easier to cheat after the fact. Excuse me, sir? Right? The harder to vote is the voter suppression tactics, voter intimidation. I don't know how he even squares that up, but okay, I'll bite on that if you want. And I'll say, you're going to call it voter ID, right? You're saying that to present an ID is somehow going to end people's ability to vote. Okay. The easier stuff to cheat, he says, is after the election, where they want to try to rig the rules through state legislatures and try to undermine the will of the people. How do you rig an election after the election? Through a state legislature. I mean, come on. Now, I think what he's alluding to here is saying that, in 2020, they had questions about what was going on, and there were hearings, which Rudy Giuliani was representing the president, and they had these hearings at state legislatures to determine if state courts could rule or, in effect, create legislation on their own when the federal Constitution requires for the time and place and manner of elections to be determined by state legislatures, right? And that's the federal Constitution. So if the federal Constitution says that you have to be a state legislator, and these state legislative bodies have to be able to come together and come up with these decisions, and they're the ones that create law, right? Lawmakers. Then it would be unconstitutional or extra constitutional for the Pennsylvania Supreme Court to kind of unilaterally say, this is what we're going to do with elections moving forward, right? Because that's not the will of the people. That's the will of the judges. And judges don't make laws. They interpret laws. So what Rudy Giuliani was doing was very on the level, in my opinion. Now you have people that take exception to what he was doing because of the outcome he was seeking. But it's very difficult, in my opinion. My view is to say that you can criticize what he's doing, which is actually just conducting hearings on what the Constitution actually says. So it blows me away that they would say that we're trying to change to make it easier to cheat by rigging an election after the fact. Hello, that's very difficult to do, right? So anyway, he goes back saying, here's their second strategy, Nicole. Listen to this.
Is the fight of our time. It isn't necessarily the fight we would have picked. It isn't necessarily what everyone would have hoped would be top of mind and top of agenda. But our generation is going to be judged by what we did at this moment, when we were faced with a clear choice between democracy and autocracy.
Again, I appreciate the theatrics. It makes for good performance art. It makes for, a good emotionally charged 57 seconds of audio. But in reality, where is this autocracy that he's talking about? At what point did they do like Maduro did? Right? Maduro, the president, self-proclaimed president of Venezuela, I say self-proclaimed because a woman presented herself as an opponent of his. And he turned around and said, oh, no. You're not qualified to run. You can't be on the ballot. So she gets somebody else that is better qualified than her, and she presents herself to get on the ballot. And they turn around and they say, no, you're not eligible to run because you were actually born in Uruguay, and you can't do that. And she turns around and says, excuse me. I'm married to a man that was born in Uruguay, but I was not, and blah, 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 and makes her case, and they go, oh, okay, forgive us, we misunderstood. So now they say, you're okay to get on the ballot. However, we've been having issues with the ballots, so you have to do it online because the offices where you're going to be able to go and, petition to get on the ballot aren't open right now. There's, for lack of better terms, I'm going to call it, like a state of emergency. And they put the military in the streets and surrounded these office buildings, and nobody could get in or out. As luck would have it, her ability to petition to get on the ballot was preempted by a lack of Wi-Fi and internet service. Up until something like the last day to qualify, where internet service was available, but they weren't able to do the necessary number they needed to do to qualify. So, lo and behold, this woman doesn't make it on the ballot. But a few other, what I would describe as loyalists of his, they end up making it on the ballot as opponents. Saying, no, we don't like him, and blah, blah, blah. So he gets to run in this election, which is in effect unopposed because the opposition is not real. And he wins election yet again. And he wins the congratulations and praise of his colleagues. President Diaz-Canel from Cuba. I would imagine others like Vladimir Putin are looking at this and saying, nice strategy, touche. I'm putting that one, I'm putting that feather in my cap too. I'll be using that next election. Are we hell-bent on becoming Venezuela, on becoming Cuba, on becoming like Russia, where you have these people that present themselves as the singular candidate in many ways in an election where there's no real options for the people? I can't imagine an America like that. But Mark Elias seems to think that this is the Republicans' plan for November, to make it harder to vote by proving who you are with a voter ID and easier to cheat by making these outlandish statements about the fight of our time, the fight for democracy. In its purest sense, democracy is every vote counting. If this isn't hypocrisy, the height of hypocrisy, I don't know what is. Mark Elias should be ashamed of himself, but of course, that would require some level of integrity to have that level of shame for oneself. Folks, I'm coming right back. Don't go anywhere.
This is America at Night with Rich Valdez.
So glad to be on your show, Rich. It's just an amazing broadcast that I hope the rest of America listens to every day.
America at Night with Rich Valdez.
So, George Soros, you know him. He's a billionaire hedge fund manager, and he's been the target of controversy recently after a recent move to become a controlling shareholder in the second largest owner of radio stations in the United States. And I would contend it's a third largest. But either way, this is according to Yahoo Finance. And this isn't the first time he's bought a media company and a large stake in. But he's doing it now going into the 2024 election. Last year, he bought a controlling stake in Vice Media Group. And I think now they're belly up, honestly. And now he's got a stake in a company that had major debt, and he bought the debt. So now he's the de facto head honcho. And George Soros now has a controlling interest in 227 major radio stations in 27 states and 45 cities across the United States. Not the station you're listening to, likely, and not this program, but all over the country. Tennessee, Washington, D.C., Florida, Maryland, Kansas, Texas, Virginia, California. A lot of big markets, many that we're on. I think all of them that we're on. And I can tell you that we will continue to ring the bell for liberty and tell the truth. Because when the left starts buying up radio stations, it just tells you how effective talk radio has actually been. And that's why they're coming after us. Folks, don't go anywhere. I'm Rich Valdez. We're coming right back. We continue the discussion straight ahead.
Live from the city that never sleeps. 17 miles from Madison Square Garden, New York City. It's America at Night with Rich Valdez. America's favorite late night talk program, featuring interesting guests from around the world and calls from across America. And now, here is your host, Rich Valdez.
Hi there, good evening, and what's up, America? I am Rich Valdez, Valdez with an S, at Rich Valdez on all of the social media. Welcome back to the program, hour number 2. And if you want to join our late night national town hall conversation, give us a call, 833-482-5337, 833-4-Valdez. We're live, we're national, and we're talking about what's going on in America. Now, some of the things we're covering tonight, and we'll get to a lot of this in the third hour of the program at the top of the next hour. But we have the judge that's rejected some of Trump's bids to dismiss the classified documents case. We'll talk about that, as well as what's going on with the free speech claims in the Georgia case. There's reports that P. Diddy and his, or I should say his ex that we talked about earlier with Lauren Conlin, she's now cooperating with authorities in the sex trafficking probe. And the No Labels group is suspending their 2024 campaign efforts. I wonder why. I think people don't care about that. That's why. Anyway, there's been a surge in burglaries in California, and we're going to talk about that as well. So plenty to discuss. Now, we were just talking about George Soros. Definitely not one of my favorite people. Somebody I try not to give a ton of airtime to because, you know, I just don't think it's worth it. But it's important for us to know what's going on. Right, and we do, for those things, we do have to, give him a little bit of the light of day. And there's a obvious agenda that he's got. And we talked about him buying radio stations, obviously, to silence the opposing voices that exist in conservative talk radio. But that's not the only thing he does, right? He's got lots of things. He's got the Open Society Foundation. He's kind of all over the place, and he's handed the reins to his son Alexander for some of it. But it seems like this guy just won't go away, and he's always around. Anyway, I want to get to the bottom of what's going on with George Soros with Dr. Rachel Ehrenfeld. She's founder and president of the American Center for Democracy and the Economic Warfare Institute, and she's got a book. The book is called The Soros Agenda, and I want to talk about what Soros is doing with his money lately in addition to buying radio stations. Dr. Rachel Ehrenfeld, welcome.
Thank you for having me.
It's my pleasure. So tell us a little bit about what is happening with George Soros. The guy's got tons of money, and he's using it to influence and control American politics as best he can. Tell us more.
Well, many of the quite awful things that we are seeing and experiencing and living through today were initiated by him, funded by him to a large degree. So, to give concrete examples, open borders. In 1995, Soros had opened an office in a law office in California to help illegal migrants. In addition to giving millions of dollars to some 15 foundations at the same time, and establishing his own foundation to lure, if you want, more illegal migration to the United States. This is 1995. And to organizations that operated here and also operated overseas, outside the United States, in order to bring in influx of illegal migrants. This was 1995. Wow. And he slowly built it up. He did it in different countries. He did it throughout, actually, the world in many places, a lot in Latin America, Central America, in European countries with other African and Asian countries. And we saw really the peak of it in Europe in 2015 when he convinced Merkel to take in, she was the Chancellor of Germany at the time, more than 1.5 million people into Germany.
Yeah, now, that was a big deal. They did that through like refugee resettlement, I think was the claim.
Yeah, refugee my foot. They did it because they just opened the borders. So they did it because, and these are not refugees. Most of people, 99% of the people, are economic migrants, or as Mr. Trump likes to say, and rightly so, many countries are emptying their prisons and mental hospitals and sending their this wonderful population here. Why bother them there? Why bother with them there? So this is one example of what he has been doing, and he keeps actually, he kept paying money for this, he keeps giving money for this, and in the same manner, he keeps actually funding pro-Hamas demonstrations, organizations that demonize Israel, that are marching all over the country, making a lot of noise, becoming more and more aggressive. He's funding many of them as well, including institutions that or organizations that promote the pro-Gaza propaganda.
And that's a big part of it. Dr. Rachel Ehrenfeld, I just want to jump in quick. We're going to take a pause here. But when we come back, I want you to tell us a little bit about why these things are happening. What is the benefit of bringing in Islamic migrants? I remember when it happened to Prime Minister Merkel, there were many folks from Northern Africa that came in, and there was a big issue at the time. And I've never been able to figure out why they want to do it, but you're the author of the book, The Soros Agenda, so I know that you can tell us a little bit about it. Folks, we're coming right back with Dr. Rachel Ehrenfeld, president of the American Center for Democracy and the Economic Warfare Institute. Don't go anywhere.
This is America at Night with Rich Valdez.
Rich Valdez, who again will do a fine job, and I know you'll enjoy listening to him.
This is America at Night with Rich Valdez.
All right, familia, welcome back, amigos. We continue our conversation with Dr. Rachel Ehrenfeld, president of the New York-based American Center for Democracy and the Economic Warfare Institute, and her book, The Soros Agenda. I want to talk about how Soros has pledged $1 million to Hamas propaganda organizations that are linked to terrorism and why he does this to begin with. Dr. Ehrenfeld.
Why he does this to begin with? Well, he doesn't like the idea of the Jews having their own state. The Jewish state of Israel is not to his liking. He's okay with Israel, but the Jewish state of Israel is bothering him. Well, Israel is the Jewish state. So, but he has been funding for decades now, directly and indirectly, pro-Hamas organizations in the United States and also in the Palestinian territories, and pro-Hamas organizations even in Israel, and anti-Israel organizations also in Israel, and also international organizations like the Human Rights Watch that has been filing more complaints about Israel than any other country in the world, and working together with the UN, of course. They had to apologize all times because it was proven that they have been lying about Israel. Unfortunately, they don't do it enough, and they continue to lie and make really all kind of organizations and media that they work with, and also funded by Soros, are spreading lies and disinformation about what is happening now, which is absolutely mind-boggling. But they do it because they work with I think the idea of changing the world and changing populations here, like we do immigration, or removing Israel from the Middle East because the radical Muslims don't like the presence of Israel there. They don't like the presence of Christians there either. And Israel, the Jews will be first, the Muslims and the other Muslims who don't support them, and Christians are next. So why is he supporting it? The political agenda combined of the left and he's supporting all the elections of all kind of woke DAs in this country that don't actually comply with the law. They have their own laws. They change really the laws through use of not only strange interpretations of the law, but also by corrupting the language to their intentions. And by now, he has been doing it for many years. Unfortunately, it has not been, nobody paid attention to it, I think, besides me for a long time. And so what we are having today is a corrupt justice system completely. And so that also affects the way that the policy or the statements or the executive orders that he's issuing or somebody is telling them to issue are being directed, and to what it is being directed. It is just not only. It's mainly we see it if we just look at it. Pardon me. If you just look at it, it looks like chaos. But there is a system in this chaos, because the chaos leads to the strengthening of the government, weakening of the public, increasing public support, public dependency in the government, and it goes for everything, like letting in the illegal migrants to this country. This is, changing the makeup of the American populace, changing the culture, changing values, bringing in more criminals, more drugs. I mean, you look at, and he has done it. He has done not in. He was the one who started with this. Others picked it up, but he continues to pay and to fund everybody running for election. It doesn't cost all that much money. DAs, prosecutors, judges, where they are being elected, secretaries of state, where they are being elected, all people who run local governments and the federal and officials that run for the government positions that are being elected. It doesn't cost that much, and he gets his people there.
Yeah, and it's such a convoluted thing. Something you mentioned right now, that it makes we the people weaker, but it somehow makes the government stronger. And
Sure.
and this is the most dangerous idea that I think we can discuss, is where the people lose their power. And this is, I think, what we've seen with every one of the situations you've mentioned, whether it was bringing in immigrants to other places in Europe or bringing them in right here in the United States. I mean, in addition to destabilizing the situation, I think the byproduct of that is the fact that you're going to rely on the government to try to bring about order in the chaos that you've just created. And it's a
the
sick
government
cycle.
is not bringing any order, because the government is also following
They're in on it.
what he has already established, which is no law, no rule of law.
This is absolutely terrible stuff. And it's nothing that we didn't know, but things that you're making very crystal clear.
I proved them. I document them in the book. The text is only 100 pages. The documentation is additional 150 pages.
Oh, wow.
So
very well researched.
everything that I say to you, everything that I have written in the book is very, very thoroughly documented. So it's important to read because it's important to understand how what we are living today is happening, how it actually came to be. And so if people really know the strategies and the tactics that have been used, they can actually counter them. But if you don't know what you are dealing with, it's very difficult to counter, right?
I agree with you 100%. Otherwise, it's kind of like you're trying to play a guessing game. Like, why is this happening, right? You're kind of dumbfounded. And once you know what's going on, you know what's going on. Folks, Dr. Rachel Ehrenfeld is the founder and the president of the American Center for Democracy and Economic Warfare Institute. And Dr. Ehrenfeld, tell us a little bit for everybody that's listening. Let them know how they can, get a copy of your book, The Soros Agenda, and also how they can follow and support the work you're doing in your organization.
Thank you very much. The Soros Agenda is available on Amazon, Amazon.com, and other booksellers. And it can also, if people go to the website, American Center for Democracy, acdemocracy.org, they can read much more about Soros's activities before and after and during, because the book mainly focuses on the United States, but not only, and there is much more information about him and about his son as well, and their activities in the United States and elsewhere on the website, and additional byproducts of this, of pushing America off the cliff. If you want many interesting articles, it's acdemocracy.org. They can support, it would be fantastic if they can support the organization. They can actually subscribe to our email. It is not frequent, but it's always very interesting and full of information.
Outstanding. And folks, I'll remind you that Dr. Ehrenfeld was a visiting scholar at Columbia University's Institute of War and Peace Studies, research scholar at NYU Law, a fellow at Johns Hopkins, and earned her PhD in criminology from Hebrew University School of Law. Dr. Ehrenfeld, very, very eye-opening conversation. Folks, make sure you get a copy of that book, The Soros Agenda. And Dr. Ehrenfeld, we have about 30 seconds left. What is your admonition to everyone that's listening in America?
Well, I really suggest to read my book, of course, because it is an eye-opener, and to pay attention because people everywhere are talking about, well, there is no, look at all these DAs, there is no justice anymore, and people are afraid because people are being arrested, people are being followed, people are being brought to trial.
And they're being silenced. You're right. Dr. Rachel Ehrenfeld, thank you for being with us tonight. You are a gentlewoman, a scholar, and a patriot. I thank you for being with us. Folks, we continue with your calls and more straight ahead. Don't go anywhere. I'm Rich Valdez.
There's more news in your commentary, in your analysis, than there is on the news network.
America at Night with Rich Valdez.
All right, America, welcome back. We continue our conversation. This time, we're talking about what is going on with children who are dealing with depression. Now, there's teenagers out there that are increasingly using social media to self-diagnose their mental health issues. This is alarming parents and advocates who say that actual care should be easier to access than going on TikTok or Instagram. And while that may be true, I think it's a lot easier to get on TikTok than it is to go to your doctor and get some sort of mental health assessment. I think the real test becomes, what will we allow? And before TikTok and Instagram and those things, it was, Dr. Google. It was WebMD, right? And everybody was self-diagnosing that way. So I think that's always been an element of what we do as people, but it's probably exacerbated for sure by the advent of, all this information that is on all of the social media platforms. And there's a poll by EdWeek Research Center, and it just came out this week. 55% of the students are using social media to self-diagnose, and 65% of teachers say they've seen the phenomenon right in their classrooms. Now, some experts say that they've regularly observed this practice as well, and that the solution is not as simple as taking away phones or chastising teenagers who turn to free methods to receive mental health advice, but more comprehensive assistance may be difficult, and that's what they need. So this is why it's happening. Now, obviously, look, I can do the same thing with my car, right? The consequence is probably a lot less. But if my car is acting up, I can take it to a mechanic and get it fixed, and that can cost me $100 or more per hour. Or I can go on YouTube and have some guy that's fixing it himself telling me where to buy the tools. Click the link in the description below, and you can get all the tools here and fix it yourself. I would not recommend fixing your own mental health, although I think you play a role in that. I think there's a time and a place for going to YouTube for solutions, is the point I'm making. And I don't know if we can make mental health that much more accessible, because we don't control mental health, right? It's a free market. And those that are out there providing mental health services are accessible. There's platforms like these online, I guess, therapy, we'd call it, online therapy, where people can see their therapist weekly right through their cell phone or through their computer. And these things are things that are new now from COVID that really weren't available, or at least weren't popular before. But I want to get to the bottom of this, because this is a very interesting thing. We've talked about self-diagnosis amongst teens in the past, and you combine that with these algorithms that these social medias put together, and it could take you down some amazing rabbit holes. Dr. Dean Beckloff is a licensed professional counselor who has extensive experience working with children and teens that are dealing with depression, and he's our guest now. Dr. Dean Beckloff, welcome, sir.
Yeah, it's very good to be with you again.
Thank you. And let's chat about this, because obviously this is one of those issues that I think is, it doesn't go away, right? We're going to continue to talk about self-diagnosis for quite a while. And I don't know if the answer is, limiting TikTok. I don't think that's the answer. I think it's really public awareness and telling people, look, don't believe everything you hear on TikTok. But what are your thoughts?
Well, I think you've made a couple of really good points. One of them is, man, there's a lot of good things that came out of the pandemic. One of them was, really learning a lot about what you can do yourself. And like you said, people can now access mental health help through counseling by just even getting on their phone, which is absolutely amazing. Now, we also know there was a lot of negative things that came out of COVID. Obviously, it was a pandemic, and it was illness and death, and a lot of problems with our teenagers who were kind of locked away at home. And the only thing that was available was social media. And at the same time, that's how they were doing school. So there was no rubbing of shoulders of teenagers together. So we know the isolation was not helpful. Everyone suffered. I can only tell you that everybody that I talk to now always brings up the pandemic and COVID and the effects on their children, which is just amazing. But everybody does. But you made another good point, which is, hey, we can figure out all kinds of things that we can do by ourselves now. I mean, I can fix a door that's broken. Just get on the internet, get on YouTube, and find out how to do it. It's absolutely stunning, the amount of information out there. But with it comes dangers, of course.
Right. And what I find is, for example, let's just say somebody is dealing with an issue, whatever the issue is, a lack of motivation, inability to focus, they feel sad, whatever it is. And they put these symptoms in, they get a video. Let's say they stumble across a Dr. Dean Beckloff video on YouTube that gives some generalities on, here's what the data says. here's what might be happening, but to learn more, call me, in sort of an advertisement, if you will, but where you get into things. You may give enough information in that where somebody can realize that, if they want to help their mood, maybe they want to practice mindfulness a little more and give them tips on doing that, almost like a free session. Yeah. Things like that I think are great if you pay attention to who's giving you the information. Like, is it Dr. Dean Beckloff or is it, Rich Valdez from the radio, right? Who knows nothing about that, needs mental health services, shouldn't be offering them. So I think that is part of it, and that's kind of buyer beware, no?
Right, exactly. And, teenagers are needy folks. They're growing up, and if they see somebody on YouTube or on any kind of social media, TikTok, that's kind of cool, and they're describing their symptoms, well, maybe I've got that too. Maybe that would make me look cool. Maybe I could draw and attract some people, and maybe I do really have that. So you see, people can be very influenced, and our teenagers certainly can be influenced by other people and other kids, other teenagers.
Sure. Yeah, I've heard, listen, I have, well, now they're a little older, but, for a while I had two teenagers, girls, and I would hear them interacting with their friends, and some of their friends would place so much ownership on issues of mental health. And it was interesting to me. And for example, like, let's say I was going through something, I would probably say something like, I'm going through a really tough time, or I'm feeling very depressed. I don't think I would say my depression is acting up. I wouldn't own the depression because my brain doesn't work that way. But I noticed that many of them say that, oh, that's not good for my anxiety. My anxiety's acting up. They take total possession of this thing as if it's theirs and it's never going away.
Yeah, absolutely. And it feeds on itself. And then they're diagnosing each other. Yeah, I've got that. I mean, I had a couple of girls we had one patient, I guess you would call her. She was in 8th grade, I believe, but she had a friend who was always talking about suicide, and then she was hospitalized several times, and she thought, well, that's the way to go, I guess. And she did it. She was also suddenly suicidal, and then also needing to go to the hospital. And, those things kind of catch fire. And one of the things that we've looked at, and I'm sure you've heard the statistics too, that our teenagers' mental health has been worsening probably over the last 20 years. It was suddenly getting worse prior to the pandemic. Things really got gunning during and after the pandemic. And a part of that, of course, was the pandemic and the social isolation and the deficits in not being around other kids. But then we had, an explosion of information going on too. Well, we get influenced by that, and our teenagers do too.
Yeah. Folks, we're on with Dr. Dean Beckloff, licensed professional counselor, and his website, drbeckloff, 2fs.com, drbeckloff.com. We're coming right back with him. We're going to continue our discussion on this conversation and a couple of other things I want to ask him. Don't go anywhere.
This is America at Night with Rich Valdez. Call now, 833-4VALDEZ. That's 833-482-5337. 833-4VALDEZ. That's Valdez with an S. The best guests, the best opinions. This is America at Night with Rich Valdez.
All right, America, we continue our conversation with Dr. Dean Beckloff. And Dr. Dean, I want to ask you a question because I think a lot of people are listening and they say, this guy's really smart. He knows what he's talking about. How did you end up doing this? Were you a little kid and said, one day I want to sit on a leather couch with a clipboard and, interview people and help them through their feelings? What was it like for you?
I started out my career as a school teacher and began running into folks who were also being a therapist or counselor with some of my students, and I thought, well, that would be kind of cool. And so kind of went that direction and began getting more training and got a couple more degrees, and here I sit. Leather couch, well, when you're working with kids and teenagers, it's not quite that way. You're trying to connect with them in lots of different ways. But you also have to work with families. And it's the whole family that we need to be talking to. When you're a teenager and you have two girls, I had two girls, they still are alive. They are no longer teenagers and middle schoolers, but they are now married and have little ones themselves. But, it's a hard passage of time. It really is. Mine did not have the social media when they were teenagers. It was just beginning, really. And there were no smartphones at all. It was the old flip phones back then.
Yeah.
And now, I remember I hate to say this, but just tell them, I remember when the World Wide Web came into being and came into existence, and we were like, oh my word, information literally at our fingertips. Well, with smartphones, it's literally at our fingertips. It's unbelievable, the amount of information. So our kids are inundated with a lot. And then they're just trying to grow up. That brain, it's growing and developing, and it's a bucking bronco sometimes. And so they're trying to learn how to harness that brain and learn how to ride it out. And they do. They will. But it takes some time, and they need some help.
I think that's really well put. And, something you said that it's like a bucking bronco and it takes time. I wish someone would have told me that when my kids were younger, because there were times where, I don't have any hair left, but if I had any, I would have pulled it out because I was so frustrated with just like I didn't understand why things weren't happening the way I wanted them to. And oftentimes I think, family therapy or even therapy one-on-one with you and teenagers and whatnot, it can really be avoided or at least supported with really just helping parents to understand these things a little bit better. And while I have a deep appreciation for what I'm going to call the old school, where, if I were to go to my dad and say, Dad, I feel depressed, I think he'd laugh. And then he'd say, all right, he'd smack me and he'd go, all right, get back to work. You got plenty to do. Let's go. Depression, what's that? That was something in the 1930s, right? And it would be over. And I think, that's probably not the best approach, but there's a degree of that I think is helpful, and then there's also the part of it where you actually do want to understand that and realize that, maybe the way that we were parented last generation or two or even three generations ago could stand to be improved so that we could help our kids better to get them through things that they perceived as trauma, if you will, that might affect them through their teen years or even later into life. And you could avoid some of that or mitigate some of those circumstances in a better way. And it really would come through parenting better, right? It's not so much sending your kid to the shrink and the leather couch that doesn't exist, but more so having the parent do a better job. Would you agree with that statement?
Absolutely. And to tell you the truth, we at our center, we have like a ping pong table. Ping pong therapy works. We talk to kids over playing pool, just any way to get connected. Some kids can do something can do a lot of talking when they're moving, and then other kids love to just sit on the couch and extrapolate and talk and process, and that's good. That's very good. I'll tell you, we have some wonderful parents out there who are in the know. It's absolutely stunning to me, the kind of knowledge that our parents have now. And they're doing a good job, and they're working hard. And, of course, they care about the kids and are willing to do whatever it takes to take care of those kids. I know with we were talking about, I've got a few things for you to do then if you're depressed. I remember my kids were I'm bored when they were little.
I'm bored.
Well, I've got a couple of things that you can do. There's some laundry to be folded. or you can figure out something that you want to do. Because, some things are for them to figure out, especially boredom. But
I agree with that.
I never bought into feeling like I need to take care of their boredom. That's something that they're capable of doing. And I want to help promote that they can do some things and to be independent. But anyway, our parents would have been a little bit different about mental health issues. And the positive side to all this is that kids are more open. Hey, maybe I do have an issue. And because of that, they are talking to their parents, and their parents then are reaching out to people like us who are, ready to work with them and help them in this process.
Dr. Dean Beckloff, licensed professional counselor. Stick with me. We're coming right back. Don't go anywhere.
This is America at Night with Rich Valdez. Call now, 833-4-VALDEZ. That's 833-482-5337. 833-4-VALDEZ. That's Valdez with an S.
All right, America, welcome back. We continue our conversation with Dr. Dean Beckloff, and we wrap it up. And it seems like social media poses a profound risk of harm to kids, not the least of which is declaring yourself undiagnosed while diagnosing yourself on TikTok. And Dr. Dean, in the minute or so we have remaining, I want you to give us your final thoughts.
Well, my final thought is for parents to believe that their teenager will listen to them. Their pre-teenager will listen to them. Now, they may not act like it, but if we will sit down with them, and number one, there's an old saying that says we need to listen to understand rather than listen to respond. Most of us are listening to make the next response ourselves. Better to listen to really understand. You can convey that you're really listening to understand them. And then nudge, give some light advice, maybe a little bit. I don't know how things went with you, Rich, but with me, it was like I was talking to the hand. They weren't listening. But I would see them following through with what I had said. They were doing it, even though they acted like I was giving them pretty worthless advice. And so I think they do pay attention. They do listen, even though they're at that age where they're also rejecting us, but because they're trying to grow up. So believe that you as a parent can make a deep influence on your teenager.
I believe that. I think that, there's an old saying that I believe in, and maybe I'm wrong. And if you think I'm wrong, you can all call me and yell at me in the next hour when we do open phones. But Dr. Dean, the saying is this: there are no bad kids, just bad parents. And while I don't want to indict every parent, I think you have to take responsibility, because that kid only knows what you've taught him to do. Dr. Dean Beckloff, check him out, folks, at drbeckloff.com. You are a gentleman, a scholar, and a patriot. I thank you for being with us, sir.
Sure thing.
You bet. All right, folks, Open Phone America is coming up right now. 833-482-5337. 833-4-VALDEZ. I'm Rich Valdez. I'm coming right back.
Live from the city that never sleeps. 17 miles from Madison Square Garden, New York City. It's America at Night with Rich Valdez, America's favorite late night talk program, featuring interesting guests from around the world and calls from across America. And now, here is your host, Rich Valdez.
Hi there, good evening, and what's up, America? I am Rich Valdez, Valdez with an S, at Rich Valdez on all of the social media. Welcome to hour number 3 of the program. It's our Thursday night edition of America at Night. If you want to join our late night national town hall conversation, give us a call. 833-482-5337. 833-4-Valdez is the phone number. And we've had some discussion on a number of really interesting topics tonight. We've talked about George Soros and so much of what he's doing, from buying radio stations to funding pro-Hamas terrorist organizations, as well as what is going on with P. Diddy, Puff Daddy, Sean Combs, and that whole sex trafficking investigation. The New York Post reporting that his ex-girlfriend, Cassie, is potentially a cooperating witness for the government. And that's very interesting, to say the least. We'll get into that in a little bit. And we also talked about mental health issues and the importance of staying attuned to those things, because more and more people are self-diagnosing. And I thought that was a really interesting topic, because we covered that before from a different angle. And it seems it's still a problem, with 55% of people claiming to self-diagnose based on what they see on social media, which I think is kind of crazy. But again, maybe not everything is bad on social media, right? It doesn't guarantee it to be wrong. It's just interesting that that's where we're at. And, of course, your calls, thoughts, and opinions on all of the hottest stories of the day. And I want to begin with a clip of audio. This is Harry Enton. He's a senior data reporter on CNN earlier today, and he says that less than 50% of Democrats are approving of Joe Biden and his handling of the Israeli-Hamas war. Listen to this.
Well, look here, the Israel-Hamas war. Look at that approval rating. Less than 50% of Democrats are approving on Joe Biden on the Israel-Hamas war. And more than that, John, these numbers have gotten significantly worse. So this is Democrats' views of Biden on the Israel-Hamas war. Look back in October of 2023. It was 67%. Look where we are today, 48%. That disapprove number, look at that, jumped up from 28% in October of 2023 to 46% now. This is within the margin of error. Democrats are split on Joe Biden's handling of the Israel-Hamas war. John, you know I look at poll numbers a lot. For a president to be doing this poorly amongst his own party on any issue is quite something to see.
Yeah, I think that is quite something to see, for sure. And again, I think we could have seen this coming, right? And I think there's a few things to blame here. One, he's really bad at this, Joe Biden, right? Really bad. Like, one would have thought he would have had Israel's back. And then the other part of it is, I think there's a growing number of, I don't know, I guess I'm going to get a few people angry with me and say there's a growing degree of anti-Semitism coming from those that would claim to be center-right, if that makes sense. Well, what are you saying, Rich? How dare you? Well, I see that. I see a lot of people making, you just read the comments in some of these, and it could be bots and it could be, AstroTurf, not real grassroots. But you read some of the comments on these threads on social media, and the things that people talk about, right? Just about like certain ancient religious Jewish practices that maybe many of us won't agree with. I think it's called Bet Mitzvah Bapeh or something along those lines, and using this as the way to kind of to claim that all members of the Jewish faith are somehow complicit in this particular thing, or that there was a child sex trafficking bust in Mexico and in Guatemala. Just a few days ago, the United States Attorney Office in New York, the Southern District of New York, was reporting that there was a guilty plea entered by, let me see if I find this here. I left it open right here. 3 defendants. Listen to this. Hopefully it doesn't go away. 3 defendants in a group called Lev Tahor. It's a cult. This is being reported by the Times of Israel. Abduction case were convicted, not a guilty plea, a conviction, in New York. And this is a kidnapping that occurred back in 2018. And I could probably get into this whole story, but my point here is that these 3 guys, they're brothers, Yoel Weingarten, Yaakov Weingarten, and Shmuel Weingarten. They're part of this, what's being called here, an extremist sect of Judaism called Lev Tahor. And it includes kidnapping young women and some young boys. And, right here, let's see. Kidnapping, child exploitation, kidnapped for their role in abducting a 14-year-old girl from New York. And anyway, nobody's condoning this, right? But by no stretch of the imagination would I ever say that every Jew I've ever met is now somehow indicted because these three idiots were indicted for their crimes. They're criminals, and they were treated as such. That doesn't mean you can indict an entire religion. I mean, come on, right? That's just crazy. So I think, there's a lot of that going on. A lot of people that are blaming things that they should probably blame on people that are Marxist sympathizers, communist sympathizers, and now they're saying that these are Zionist sympathizers. I'm a Zionist sympathizer. I think Israel should exist. I think that Israel has a right to be a home to the Jews that were displaced from the biblical time through the Holocaust. It's that simple to me. For others, it's not that simple, and I understand that. That may be a bone of contention. But I don't think that when Kanye West says that it's the Jews, quote unquote, that are in charge of the music industry, that he's talking about every last Jew that I've met, people that I know are faithful people that love God. So, I think there's a lot of confusion there, or at least not confusion as much as there is conveniently commingling one group with the other. Somebody who claims to be, for example, you get some people that are Catholic or Christian that will, in the past, have gone and bombed abortion clinics. Can anybody here raise their hand and say, well, if you're a Christian, you're supposed to be bombing abortion clinics? I mean, you might say that, we would expect you to be pro-life. Okay, and you'd have argument on that. But I could never sit here and say, yeah, no, I think everybody that's, God-fearing Christian should be blowing up, destroying these abortion clinics. Of course not. That's just not how it works. And this is the same way, and that's the point that I'm making. So I'll get into your calls on that and everything else. We also have calls on everything else. I want to get into these calls because there's a lot of good stuff out here. Let's see. This is really good, really good. I want to go to Michael, Pendleton, Oregon on KUMA. Go right ahead.
Oh, Rich. Hey, great to talk to you. A long time since I've been on the program. I got a job schedule switch from the swing shift to day shift, so I wasn't able to phone in on the swing shift. So I'm so glad to be back on my schedule.
Welcome back, brother.
Yes, Rich. Great to talk to you. Yes, I was calling. I've heard, of course, our friend about Billy Cunningham, the great American. He's mentioned this many times. Yes, he's great. Like you, Rich. You and him, are the top two in my book for the talk shows. But he's brought up the fact that he's had guests on the show. I know you've talked about this too, and I'm sure it's a concern of both President Biden and President Trump. The factor of Robert Kennedy Jr. as a third-party candidate, the effect that he could have on the election, and who's he going to draw more from? President Biden or President Trump. So I wanted to get your take, your input on that, Rick.
Yeah, my thought really here, Michael, and it's a good point, especially when we're talking about how Biden's losing support with respect to the Hamas war. I really think that RFK, he's a very progressive liberal. There's one issue where he, potentially might get a very small percentage of voters from Trump, and that's the vaccine issue. He's very opposed to, vaccine mandates. And I think Trump was also opposed to vaccine mandates, but Trump is also the pioneer of Operation Warp Speed, which is, bringing vaccines to market in a remarkable time frame. So people that are at odds with Trump on that might like RFK Jr. as an option. However, the rest of the party, right? Joe Biden's old enough to have been a centrist Democrat once, right? He wasn't always a very left-leaning progressive sympathizer. He just wasn't. And we've played all the different audio that we could play to prove that point. He's that guy that people thought of at one point as a Kennedy Democrat. Well, Kennedy is a Kennedy Democrat, and I think there are people that just from name recognition and other causes that I think they'll see some alliance with RFK, and he's likely going to hurt Biden more than he's going to help Trump, or hurt Trump, I should say, which will help Trump in the long run. So that's my thought on that one. And I can't wait till it happens, honestly. I can't wait to see if I'm right or wrong. Does he pull off a Ross Perot effect or not? I don't know the answer to that. But thank you, Michael. I'm glad you're back and you're able to call in. Pendleton, Oregon, KUMA. Always love to hear from our friends on the West Coast. And we continue with your calls and more. 833-4-VALDEZ. Full call board. If you get a busy signal, just try back. And let me see. There's another one here that was on hold just as long. Let's go to Jane, calling from the Albany area of New York, WGDJ. Jane, go right ahead.
Yeah. Hi, Rich.
Hey.
I want to. How are you? You do such a great job. I swear to God.
Thank you.
You and your call screener are the best people out there.
Great team.
The gentleman that was on, he's
Dr. Dean
very
Beckloff?
intelligent. Yes. He really has the right idea. When I was an abuse counselor, I found that it was more productive. Many of us broke away from the state, and we got our patients from pediatricians and general practitioners who just said, these people need help. And my thing was to go to their house, to everyone would sit at the table or around the living room, and the agreement was we're going to try to be respectful to each other, and we're going to talk in a circle. And everyone gets to talk. And believe it or not, guys, this can be fun. So let's start. And those of you who are afraid of the person who's abusing, I'm here to look out for you. But that person also deserves an opinion, and we're going to talk them into doing it calmly. And I was on 24-hour call, and we would sit for hours talking, and it was so cool because once one person made a breakthrough, and they were so elated because nothing happened except everyone listened.
Now, Jane, were you talking to parents or to children, or was it a different dynamic altogether, just like abuser versus abusee?
Well, most of the time it was one of the parents doing the abuse. And so the thing was, we're going to sit here, and I would talk to the abuser and say, okay, this accusation has come true. I'm not going to be judge and jury. I want to sit here, and I want to help you through it. The agreement was no amphetamines while you're having treatment. I want your heads clear. I want you talking to each other. And I kept, good God, I always kept at least 10 sleeping bags at my home.
Wow.
And if I saw things got out of hand, I would tell everyone, okay, you know what? We're going to go to my house. We're going to have a slumber party. We're going to let your dad or mom or whatever, we're going to let them have some time tonight to contemplate what has happened.
Wow. Let me tell you, it sounds like a lot of work, and I doubt that there are people as committed as you that are carrying sleeping bags in their cars. And if they are, it's because they can't afford their rent because of Joe El Baboso Biden. But, Jane, always eye-opening to have these conversations with you. And I have to say, if we had that level of commitment, maybe things would be better today. Godspeed to you, Jane. I appreciate the call. Big shout out to everybody in Albany, New York, WGDJ. Great station. Folks, we're coming right back. The rest of your calls and more. Don't go anywhere.
This is America at Night with Rich Valdez. Call now, 833-4-VALDEZ. That's 833-482-5337. 833-4-VALDEZ. That's Valdez with an S.
By the way, your ratings are up. Congratulations. I had somebody. It's always nice to check. I like to see, even if they're friends, I like to see how are they doing. Are people listening, right?
That's
but
right.
You're doing great.
America at Night with Rich Valdez.
All right, America, welcome back. And I want to continue our conversation. I want to go to Brooklyn, New York, WFAS, my flagship station, 1230 on the AM dial. Alex, go right ahead.
Hey, thanks for taking the call. And I want to comment about the Biden administration turning now on Israel more than they have up until now. And I think that people need to understand that the administration and Joe Biden, they're turning their backs on Israel, not because of they believe in morals, not because they think that what Israel is doing in Gaza is wrong or right, but because you have pro-Palestine protesters in this country that are saying they're not going to vote for Joe Biden in the general election if he doesn't come out against Israel. So Joe Biden and his administration, they don't give a damn about the people living in Gaza. They don't give a damn about the people in Israel. All they care about is the votes. It's not the people. It's to be able to remain in power. And, that shouldn't be comforting to anybody, even if you're anti-Israel, pro-Palestine, because if he doesn't care about you and only cares about the votes, then we also have other situations where if he can remain in power, like allowing illegal immigrants into this country and, in democratic states and cities where the Democrats have the same kind of belief as he does, where it's all about remaining in power, they incentivize for illegal immigrants to want to come to democratic states and cities where, they let them squat there and they give them credit cards to come to like cities like New York City, because then in the census they get counted as being there and they get more delegates in the election, and that's how they are able to remain in power. So if you may be anti-Israel, and I'm not talking about you, I'm talking about anybody that is,
sure,
and be happy about Joe Biden coming out against Israel, which I think is wrong, but you're going to suffer as a result of this administration only caring about getting votes in different ways.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. And Alex, I think you hit the nail on the head when you say they only care about the votes. And I think, this is a statement that's tough to make or easy to make, but many people are just going to say, well, every politician only cares about votes. Nobody really cares about the people, right? And while I think there's some truth in that, I think there are certain politicians that are somewhat altruistic, and it doesn't mean we should only vote for the altruist that's running for political office. But I think it's incredibly clear here that Biden isn't it. Right? No matter what your belief is, this isn't working out. It's not working out for Democrats or Republicans. Biden's got to go. And I appreciate your thoughts on that. The music means they're kicking me out. I'm coming right back with the rest of your calls. 833-482-5337. Again, big shout out to WFAS New York City. Don't go anywhere. It's Rich Valdez. And we're coming right back.
America, this is Night. This is Rich Valdez. Call now, 833-4-VALDEZ. That's 833-482-5337. 833-4-VALDEZ. That's Valdez with an S.
All right, America, welcome back. And normally I would play some amazing audio here to shift gears in the conversation, but honestly, I really like what you guys have to say tonight, and I want to continue the conversation on the topics that we've been discussing. And one of the things that we've been discussing, other than the Take Two, the radio stations that were sold in effect to George Soros and Biden's disastrous handling of the Hamas war, is what's going on with parents and kids and their unique mental health issues that seem to be getting worse, not better. And I've always believed the old adage that there's no bad kids, just bad parents. And I think there's truth in that. I'm sure these kids that go and shoot up schools, probably not the parents' fault, honestly. I think we can't blame everything on them, but we could blame a whole lot. And I want to go to Joe in Salem, Arkansas, KSAR. Joe, go right ahead.
Rich, I want to hit the micro aggression first and then the kids.
Go right ahead.
Hey, I had to use microaggression on this radio station, and I love them dearly, but I tried to get them to do more talk radio. What we've got is I've missed the last 5 or the last 10 of your shows because of preempting the Cardinals, and I grew up with the Cardinals huh?
For sports, right?
Yeah, sports. Now, they are a news sports station, but they have a lot of other things thrown in there. And they said they're not going to get rid of Rich Valdez, but they don't want any more political talk. Okay. But, here's the thing is, it cramps my style, and I'm capable of macro aggression if I have to, so I'm going to keep working on them. Because
thank you for that.
I do not like to miss your show. Now, back to the kids. Are you forgetting about Cain and Abel, where it all started with bad seed? Now, I had a brother out of 7 that my dad had to finally disinherit and disown because he was so mean. Even in his adult years, and he's alienated from all the rest of us.
Was he the oldest?
I'm the oldest, and he's 17 months younger than me. He's number 2 out of 7. And everything he done was mean and evil towards the family, and we didn't live like he did. He's way up there in stature in his community. I'll just tell you Joplin, Joplin, Missouri. But anyway, that's an example. I know of other examples in other families where the parents were just as good as can be, and you couldn't do anything with them. And that's where the devil comes in, and his minions called demons, and they just get into certain people, So,
I agree with that too. Listen, I think it's a general rule of thumb that most kids are inherently good, and it's biblical, honestly. But you're right. There are instances where evil is evil, and evil will tend to rear its head in many different places. And Cain and Abel is a great example. I stick with my rule of thumb in thinking that, typically there's no bad kids, just bad parents. And, we could probably make the argument, but I agree with you that there are exceptions to those rules, and they're unfortunate. I really do. I think they're unfortunate. I'm sorry you guys went through that, Joe.
Okay, well, appreciate it. Keep it up.
Thank you, brother, and I appreciate the support on your local station. And, I definitely do political talk. I don't do much sports, but I know all about getting preempted for sports because I used to be on a station in Philly, great station, one of the stations that was purchased by the company that Soros invested in. And they're great people, amazing station in Philadelphia. However, every now and again, because I did weekends and a lot of times sports were on the weekend, they'd be like, all right, we got you slated for this time, from this time to this time. And then they go, the game went into overtime, or, we have to cover the post-game show. And I would still get paid for the show, right? But I didn't get to do the show. And that, to use an old reference, right, it burnt my britches, right? I was really, really feeling some kind of way when they told me that, I was going to get paid to work for work I didn't even do because it was uncool. And they did it because I made myself available for the 2 or 3 hours or whatever it was. But it was just always something that I was just like, oh, come on, let me do the show. And I get it. People are listening to live sporting events and they want to listen. So, it's a catch-22. It's one of those where I guess, you're not going to win ever, or at least not win all the time. But thanks for the call, brother. I appreciate it. Big shout out to KSAR. And let us continue. Let's go to Pittsburgh, KDKA, oldest station in America. Let's go to Brian. Go right ahead.
Good. How are you, Rich?
Wonderful. Thank you.
Oh, great. Hey, I'd like to confirm, I'd say about 3 weeks ago, that KDKA, an Odyssey affiliate, is now one of the, George Soros's majority shareholder. And they've already started making changes, Rich. I've always liked, KDKA is like the preeminent talk show they have the most local guests in our area, but they've already made changes. For instance, they took off that red eye radio that's on usually from 1 a.m. To 5.
It follows me,
a.m.
yeah, in a lot of markets.
Eastern time. Yeah, they took that off about 3 weeks ago. And they replaced it with, I'd have to check into this because sometimes I just fall asleep. It depends. They replaced it with either recorded or pre-recorded, or it sounds like a little town hall meeting. And I hate to say it, but they sound like students, and they're kind of leftist leaning, a little liberal, progressive, and I'm not really interested in that. But hey, I'd like to confirm. There's one other thing, and this is disturbing. I do notice the changes. I've listened a long time. On weekends, they brought in. I won't use her name. That wouldn't be right. Please. We have some local talk show hosts, and they brought in a woman who's definitely the leftist, progressive, liberal agenda. But she said something disturbing this past weekend. She actually promoted like we have some comedy clubs here in Pittsburgh. She promoted a comedy benefit that would benefit Planned Parenthood. Oh. And, I don't know what you think about that, but that wouldn't have happened in Pittsburgh not that very long ago, that they could allow that.
Yeah, I'm getting word from our control room that the show that is now following this program is a show done by University of Pittsburgh students. So my hope for them is the old William F. Buckley adage, right, that if you're not a liberal when you're young, you have no heart, but if you're not a conservative when you're older, you have no brain, right? So we can only hope that they will catch up and maybe listen to this show while they're doing their show prep, and we can maybe sway them on a thing or two. One thing I will say is the oldest station in America, KDK, a fantastic station I adore being on, is a wonderful station, and it is one of the proudest moments I've had since I've been here. Is we were the number one show on KDKA. I forget what month it was, but like of all the shows on KDKA, this show, America at Night, Rich Valdez, we were number one, and I thought that was just amazing, and it really reinforces, the idea that there's still a lot of people that want to know what's going on in America, especially at night. So I'm very thankful for that. I'm also thankful for you, Brian, for giving us a call in. Don't lose heart. People are good. Honestly, I think people are good. People have good intentions and good hearts. Some people may not be as good as others, but ultimately I think the good guys win, so stick with us, brother. Folks, we're coming right back with the rest of your calls from Illinois, Ohio, Pittsburgh again. Don't go anywhere.
This is America at Night with Rich Valdez. Call now, 833-4VALDEZ. That's 833-482-5337. 833-4VALDEZ. That's Valdez with an S. Call now, 833-4VALDEZ. That's 833-482-5337. 833-4VALDEZ. That's Valdez with an S.
Clearly, the strategy that the United States is implementing at this point is not working to change the behavior of Prime Minister Netanyahu. It is not working to end the war. So obviously something has to change. And I think it's pretty clear they're discussing that, I think, in the White House, and I hope in the White House in the Situation Room at this point in time. The question is what that will be. And there's a number of allies of President Biden's in the Senate, Democratic senators and others who've been pretty outspoken about the need for conditioning aid, at least as a consideration. That's obviously something that is being considered, should be considered. The question is, will that change the behavior, and what additional leverage needs to be put on Prime Minister Netanyahu at this point in time to change the trajectory?
That, of course, is Jen Circle Back Psaki Silent P. And she was on the Morning Joke today on MSNBC asking whether conditioning the aid might change Netanyahu's behavior. Meaning, we'll only give you Iron Dome missiles if you promise not to use them. Right? What kind of conditions are we thinking here? I think it's silly to. I mean, you could do what you want, obviously, right? You're the president of the United States. You're Joe Biden. We already see what you're doing to the country. But I don't think it's a win, right? I don't think Biden's in a position where he's really pulling off a win right now. Let's go to Bill, Pittsburgh, PA, KDKA. Go right ahead.
Hi, Rich. Hey, I'm not sure of the story, the fairy tale. Well, we got Lincoln, Blinken, and Nod, right? We already know who Blinken is. Lincoln is John Kirby. Hello?
Yeah, I'm listening.
Oh, I'm sorry. Lincoln is John Kirby from the Pentagon, because he's always kind of squinting his eyes, and I think he's winking his eye at all the young girls out there with the.
You know, Bill. I think when he's winking, he's probably like trying to signal people, telling people to like grab a hold of Biden. I don't know if you've seen some of those videos where Biden's making these kind of crazy statements, and you see Blinken back there, like oh, geez, he's not doing that again. Oh, don't say that, Mr. President. Right? And he's always like making these funny faces to try to curtail some of what Biden is saying. I don't know. But very, very funny. Thank you, Bill. I appreciate it. Shout out to KDKA. Let's go to Paul in Zanesville, Ohio. Paul on WHIZ. What's up, brother?
Hey, how we doing tonight there, Rich? Good. I'm listening.
Amen.
With that George Soros, what he's doing with these radio stations, that's very unfortunate. That's just going to be more left-wing bias stuff, and we all know it. But now on Israel, for Joe Biden to basically, if he would turn his back on them, look, here's the facts of the matter. Now, I'm not well-versed. I'm just a middle-class dude. Now, when the Palestinian people, voted for Hamas or to be their government, right? Basically to control that.
2005.
With Hamas. Yeah, and they attack Israel and slice babies' throats and everything else they've done. Then for Joe Biden to turn his back on our ally over there, I think he's just setting himself up for disaster. I mean, come on. That's my feeling on that. And one other thing, when we was talking about, almost 50% of Democrats don't like the way things are going with Joe Biden. Well, Robert F. Kennedy, he says he thinks that Biden's trying to destroy democracy, right? And then you have this raging Cajun, Carvel.
Oh, yeah, James Carville.
Last night.
Yep.
Yeah, when we was talking last night about the blacks, the black men that are switching over. Well, Jim Carville said it. It's the economy, stupid.
Right.
People's got to work, and everything. So, that's my feeling on all that. But, great show as usual, and I dislike your feedback just a little bit.
Oh, thank you, brother. I appreciate that. And listen, I think you're spot on. It's not just the economy, stupid, though. I have to tell you, there's a number of issues where there were miscalculations. It's not incredibly popular in many communities of color, I'm going to say, to embrace the idea that we should allow children to choose their own gender. I would say it's probably more acceptable in suburban white communities than anywhere else, but it's not an incredibly popular idea. Now, that doesn't mean you don't have some college-educated Hispanic women and black women that are like, yeah, pro drag queen and pro little kids and all that stuff. But most people, in particular men that are Hispanic or men that are black, they're just not on board with this. And it's not something that they feel there's an affinity for them in. So they feel ostracized. They feel left out. And they're like, you know what? You're not helping us to earn money. You're not helping us to be safer. You say that you're going to create opportunities for those of us that are destitute, but you were in charge of the 1993 crime bill. You are in charge of opening up the southern border to allow people from other jails that are being set free to come to the United States to get free money, to be on a permanent welfare, or at least a couple of years worth of welfare. And everything you're doing undermines the Black community and the Hispanic community. So as men in this community, we're not on board. And I think that's what we're seeing happen. And it's unfortunate for Biden, but fortunate for the rest of the country that will hopefully make a departure from those policies. Paul in Zanesville, Ohio, WHIZ, I appreciate you and your kind words. Thanks for listening and thanks for the call. Big shout out to everybody in Ohio. And we're coming right back with the rest of your calls and more. Don't go anywhere.
This is America at Night with Rich Valdez. America at Night with Rich Valdez.
All right, America, here we go. Taking our final lap. Make sure you are subscribed to the podcast, just in case your local station ever needs to preempt us to bring you a great sporting event. You can always listen live right at the website, richvaldez.com. Hit the listen live button at the top of the screen, and you'll listen to the show as it's being broadcast live, or the most recent show if you're doing it while we're not live. And of course, you can subscribe to something called a podcast. I know a lot of people don't know what that is, but it's an amazing thing. When we get a new episode, you get notified. You hit, download, and boom, you get to listen to the whole show. So anyway, that's richvaldez.com. Make sure you check that out and give a follow on social media. I love that. Now, let's go to Quentin, Illinois, WHOW, and check in with Andrew. Andrew, go right ahead.
Hey, good evening again, Mr. Valdez. Great to talk to you as always.
Thank
I wanted
you.
to hit you with a quick point regarding the upcoming election. Considering the fact that both Joe El Baboso Biden and the legendary Donald John Trump, have both been president before, I think that this presents the electorate with a very unique opportunity, considering that both men have been in office for 4 years of our lives. And I think it presents the electorate with the opportunity to look back and say, was my life better under this guy or that guy? And it's not just economical or financial, but also on a global perspective, considering the wars that exist now.
Yeah. Well, I think you're right. I think it's to me, that's the way I do it. I look at this and I think, man, during the Trump years, we look at, a lot of people, I do like Trump's substance and his style, but ultimately it's his record that I'm looking at. And again, is it a 100% perfect and stellar record? I'm sure he would say, yes, it's perfect. Yes, it's huge. It's the best. But I think it is a largely positive one. And, there may be things that some people don't agree with, but by and large, Trump wins hands down. And I was with one of my liberal friends today. We went to the gym together, and he's the Cuban guy that came from Havana to Miami on a jet ski, or actually to the Florida Keys. And he was, 6 months ago, he said, I bet you $1,000 Biden gets in easily. Today, he tells me, bro, I'm glad I didn't make that $1,000 bet with you because I would have lost. He said, your guy Trump's getting in easy. And I said, look at that. And he goes, things could change, but it looks like Biden's just screwing this up beyond any recognition. Andrew, thanks for the call. Hasta la próxima. Until the next time, folks, I am Rich Valdez. Take care, good night, and God bless you, America.